Stand by for the Brewery Underground podcast.
In Nashville's harbor wise, craft and brews will meet the skies. Stephen Scott, they lead the way. Brewery Underground, night and day. Raise your glass, let's ignite. In this city, we unite. Raise your glass, let's ignite. In this city.
Hey, welcome back to the Brewery Underground podcast. Steve Sullivan here, along with Scott Turon. And today, Scott, we're kicking off something a little bit different. We love talking about breweries and beer. Now, today, we're going to get into maybe some of the stats of beer.
Yes.
Yes, it's going to be a whole lot of fun.
We goof off on this thing a lot, but sometimes we try to bring a little education to people. And
Every once in a while.
Every once in a while. It's not really us doing it, it's our guest.
Yes.
But we try to educate the people wherever we can. So I think we've got a really good guest today to do that. What do you think?
We do, and I'm going to say his name now because it's top of mind because he just told us how to pronounce his last name. I'm hoping I'm going to get this right. I'm hoping I'm not going to screw it up. From the Brewers Association, he is their staff economist. He's a writer there. He is Matt Gacioch. Matt, did I get it right?
You nailed it, Steve. That was beautiful poetry.
That is awesome. We've been practicing for the last 20 seconds or so. We got it down. I should have opened my beer to start with.
Yeah, open your beer because I have already opened up my beer. Matt, did you bring a beer to this podcast today, sir?
I wish I did. Yeah, I have a toddler and a newborn at home, and so if I have a beer at 3 p.m., I'm going to be napping before we're done recording.
Well, Matt, welcome. This is really a big deal for us to have you on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here and chat with you guys. And we can still goof off with stats. I want to make that clear, though. Just because they're numbers doesn't mean it's all buttoned up and serious all the time.
Cool. It's cool. Because it's a lot of fun. It's beer, right? It's craft beer. We have fun with that.
It is craft beer.
It's craft
Scott,
beer.
I'm going to take the lead here on what I'm drinking on this podcast. So, it is Oktoberfest season now. I have not had this version of Oktoberfest. This is from Good People Brewing Company.
Ooh.
It is their traditional festival beer, Oktoberfest, as they like to say. So here we go. I like the can out there.
Cheers. Yeah. You already crushed it a little bit. You must have really liked it.
I crushed it with my fingers there.
Well, I've got one, and I picked this up yesterday from Burial, because, I love Burial. It is called Wax Poetic Until We Surf the Fires. Figure out what that means. I don't know, but I'm sure it's a delicious beer. So cheers, fellas.
Cheers. Yeah. Well, we're going to get into it right away with you, Matt. Let's first start off with the usual question you may get every once in a while. So you're a writer with the Brewers Association. Talk to people who are not familiar with what is the Brewers Association.
Yeah, absolutely. So Brewers Association is the not-for-profit trade group that supports small and independent breweries throughout the country and increasingly throughout the world. Our kind of mission is to promote and protect these small and independent breweries, their beers, and the whole community of craft beer drinkers. And so, our work looks a lot of different ways, but my role as the staff economist is that I do a fair amount of writing, getting content out, helping our members, small breweries, understand the landscape within the craft beer market, beer more broadly, within beverage alcohol, and then even beyond, kind of understanding larger consumer trends as well that can influence the way that they're making strategic decisions for their breweries. But yeah, I'm just one of a very, very impressive group of people. I'm the least impressive, but we've got our government affairs team that's doing great work at the federal and state level. We've got our education teams that are getting resources on the brewing side and the business side. We've got our events team put on a couple great events each year. So a lot of moving parts, but at the end of the day, we're here to serve our members, these small and independent brewers.
Needless to say, though, with your job, you keep pretty busy.
That it feels that way a lot of times, and not just on this short week. Yeah, it's really dynamic, and it's really fun work for a quantitative minded beer nerd. It's like pretty much a dream job, without getting too much into it, I'm administering surveys, working with different big data sets, trying to tease out some useful insights from these data sets. And then, as you alluded to earlier, I try to, write and get some of that content out in a way that's engaging to an audience that's not always, as much of a numerophile as I am. Folks who, I have one of my coworkers, I won't mention who's sent me an email last week that was like, they promised me there would be no math. And then, it's trying to bring things to him as well as some of our members who, that might not be what they're most familiar with, most comfortable with, but get them information in a useful way.
Is that your life though? Just math, like data just constantly coming in and trying to process it and get it back out, deciphering?
In an ideal world, it would all be numbers and beer. Those would be the two. But no, as I mentioned, I do spend a lot of time. I spend a lot of time in spreadsheets and databases. But a big piece of it is not just kind of understanding what the numbers mean in a vacuum, but trying to understand the economic and social context around why we're seeing some of the numbers that we are. So yeah, in addition to data, I also spend a lot of my time kind of reading through what's happening in the larger economy, what's happening in terms of consumer behavior and consumer sentiment, and all these other factors that are some of the drivers of why we're seeing production volume trends and brewery number trends the way that we are seeing them over the past couple of years.
An example of what you just talked about and how you decipher is you released an article on July 23rd, which was the 2025 mid-year report. And I was reading it and I was like, I know there's a lot of information, and for you to be able to decipher it and put it out so that we can read it and make sense of it is pretty impressive. Can you talk about that report a little bit and kind of give us maybe the state of the union?
Yeah, absolutely. So our mid-year production survey is a smaller endeavor than our end of year production survey that we do in Q1, looking back at the past year. In that big one, it's called the Beer Industry Production Survey. We're either directly receiving or estimating the production of every single brewery in the country on an individual basis so that we could understand large trends as well as more granular trends within brewery type, within region, within state, things like that. Our mid-year survey is essentially, it's as I mentioned, a smaller endeavor that we are doing more estimating and more getting a sense of directionality and order of magnitude of things rather than kind of making this line in the sand of this is what the trend was in the previous year. And so what we found in this year's mid-year survey was an estimated reduction in number of breweries by about 1% net. So not saying that there's no breweries opening, was that brewery closures were outpacing brewery openings by about 1 percentage point. And we also estimated about a 5% decline in the volume of beer produced by craft brewers in the first half of 2025 compared to that same period a year earlier. And just for context, comparing that to 2024 numbers, the brewery opening and closure differential is almost exactly in line with what we saw in 2024. So not much of a change there. And the production volume is about 1 percentage point more contraction than we saw in 2024, where it was about negative 4% in terms of volume. There's all kinds of complexity baked into those numbers as well. I think I wouldn't be surprised if we touch at some point on kind of beyond beer products in this conversation, but some of the beer volume reduction, some of that has been just transferred to other product production. So it's not saying, it's that capacity is just unused. It's just kind of transferring. So I don't know. I just threw a bunch of numbers at you, but those are kind of the high level overviews of what we're seeing at this point in 2025.
Well, the last thing that you touched on is something, we've been doing our podcast here for about 2 years. And the last thing you really touched on is something that we have seen here in Nashville, is that it's not just about craft beer at breweries anymore, that they've expanded into other offerings. Can you go into detail a little bit more of what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Craft brewers from the beginning have been an innovative bunch and an adaptable bunch, and kind of more nimble than some of the larger players in the beer space. And that innovation for a long time was kind of pushing the boundaries of styles and what you're adding to your beers and things like that. And it's not like that's going away, but we're seeing more and more expansion into beyond beer products. A natural one for a lot of brewers is non-alcohol beer products. That right now craft has kind of an oversized share of NA volume sales compared to just all beer products. But then this is going to depend state to state, where depending on how regulations on what they're able to get licensed for. But a lot of breweries are also expanding into ciders, and some will get into craft spirits or ready to drink canned cocktails, or many are in the seltzer game already. And so all of these are kind of new opportunities to meet different consumers than kind of the core craft beer consumer. And so in 2024, we estimated that about 1 in every 4 craft breweries across the country is producing at least some of a Beyond Beer product. And so maybe it sounds like maybe you're seeing that in Nashville as well.
Yeah, you've got to, and we've talked about it many times, it seems like these breweries got to have some diversity across the board. You got to have something for everyone in these days. It's whether it could be wine or non-alcoholic stuff or a seltzer or something for everyone to just to keep coming.
Yeah. And if you think about it, if you're kind of like diehard craft beer consumer, a lot of times they have friends or family, and if they're going to be able to bring their group of people into your brewery, you got to have something that'll appeal to everyone in that group, right? It's not just the occasion of going out with your beer buddies. It's now thinking about ways to engage other kind of going out occasions for a craft beer drinker and their social group.
As a guy that writes about this, are you really surprised, and maybe some of the brewery owners that you talk to across the country, are they really surprised, do you think, about how much non-alcohol beer has taken off?
I think it's a mix of maybe some surprise in there, but it's more kind of, the folks that have gotten into NA are ones that just understand that has been a shift in consumer demand there. I think there's a lot of headlines based off of the data, some of which are overblown, but we do know that some of the younger legal drinking age adults are less prone to consume many alcoholic products in sort of one evening or one outing or things like that. And so having the option where someone can make the decision, and it's not just the younger consumers, it's across the board, but a consumer can make the decision, hey, I want to be out, I want to be tasting a great product, I want to be in this social environment interacting with my friends and the community, but I don't necessarily want to feel impaired or feel at all out of control. And so that's where a lot of this growth in NA is coming from. It is really consumer driven.
Do you yourself get to visit many breweries just to kind of get out there and and put your feet to the ground and see some of the results? Like, you're getting data, but to see it kind of in the wild, you get to do that?
I less than I would like in the normal 9 to 5 of the weekday, but fortunately, I get out to plenty, still in the evenings and weekends and things like that. And one of the things that I personally love, that I do a little bit of traveling for work to give presentations at different conferences and things like that. But I always love that sort of exploration phase where it's getting out and seeing, what the beer board looks like, what the sort of space looks like, how companies are engaging with their customers, what their hospitality models are. And just, I mean, you all know because you on this from this podcast, but beer people are some of the best people in the world. So it's just so much fun to just sit and over a pint and swap stories. And so, I wish there was more of my working hours that took place in breweries, but alas, still have to get the work done.
That's it, right? To take that data, we have to get it out to the people.
Right, exactly.
Can we talk about tariffs for a minute?
Sure.
Within the craft beer world, and from what I know, aluminum's probably the biggest thing right now, and maybe there's more than that. Maybe you can speak to that. But is the breweries taking a hit because of these tariffs?
So the answer to that is yes. And the follow-up question is to what extent those are being felt right now. And as of right now, we're still expecting sort of those impacts to continue to grow. I guess I'll start with aluminum because it is very front of mind. We're here talking on September 3rd. There's so much that changes kind of week to week, month to month. But right now there is conversation, and it's ultimately going to get up to the Supreme Court about whether some of the tariffs are legal. It's mostly focused on the reciprocal tariffs, which aluminum is not actually part of that bucket. So this is one that we expect to see kind of the impact of moving forward, irrespective of that other ruling. But the reality is that tariffs bring up the overall price of the commodity. And so there are some brewers who have longer term contracts that are set and they haven't seen a price hike yet, but we'd expect those folks, when contracts come up for renewal, that would see the increased price at that point. One of the other areas that we're seeing sort of impacts on tariffs, and this is less homogeneously across the industry, is for folks who are bringing in equipment from overseas, and a lot of breweries who are getting new tanks or a new canning line. A lot of these are coming from overseas, and so they're needing to run the math and see if it still makes sense to make those investments based off of the increase in price that come associated with the tariffs. So those are some of the main areas that we're seeing, and just putting this in larger economic context, the fact that inflation has impacted breweries the way that it's impacted a lot of consumers as well. And so when I track this over the past 5-ish years, we see that the overall cost, even pre-tariff, the cost of inputs to run a brewery and to pay the labor to run a brewery have outpaced the price of beer increases. Not saying that the price of beer hasn't increased. I'm sure anyone who listens to this and is sitting there with their own beer remembers when beer was X price. But the reality is that the input costs of running these brewery manufacturing businesses have gone up faster than that price of beer, which just means pretty simple math on that one is tightening margins for these businesses.
Do you see that impacts more of the small business owner, brewery owner, more than the larger ones, because maybe they didn't budget for these kinds of things?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's always going to be variability. I was on a call earlier today with a couple big and very big craft brewers that are certainly feeling this. No one in your annual planning makes plans for some of the jumps that we've seen in some material costs and things like that over time. So yeah, but at the same time, a bigger company, a more established brand might have more opportunities to venture into new products, explore other markets, things like that a smaller brewery wouldn't. And so, yeah, I think generally the industry is feeling the pain, and it doesn't necessarily matter too much whether you're very small or larger. I will say that, one of the things that I'm seeing in the data is, so I'll back up. The Brewers Association breaks craft breweries into 4 main types: tap rooms and brew pubs, which are kind of on-site focused models. The brew pub is the one that has more of a significant food menu than a tap room. And then the other 2 are microbrewery and regional. And these are distribution focused breweries. And what I'm seeing in the data is that the microbreweries, so the smaller of the distribution focused, are the ones that are really kind of getting hit the hardest right now, with not just on the cost of doing business, but the reality that many wholesalers and retailers are in a period of rationalization or kind of cutting down their portfolio to have sort of less diversity of product on the shelves. And a lot of times it's going to be those smaller distributing breweries that are some of the first to be cut from a retail shelf. And so, yeah, I think, it's not kind of evenly spread throughout the industry. And another point on this, hopefully not rambling too much here, but is the fact that brew pubs are performing somewhat better than tap rooms. So the breweries where food is kind of a more central part of the business model, some of those businesses are performing better over the past couple of years than tap rooms where it's just the beer. So yeah, there's a lot of nuance kind of within these headline numbers that I was mentioning earlier.
Yeah, it's interesting because I in my mind and you kind of you need to gloss over it. You actually said a lot of it. Was one of the big things you said was that maybe it's making them rethink too some of the offerings that they're putting out there, saying, okay, we're going to stick to more of a core brand rather than do a lot of different specialty beers because of all these changes going on.
Sure, yeah. We're definitely expecting to see that in the off premise in particular, where retailers and wholesalers are saying I'm having fewer beer products. At the same time, I haven't seen any indication, whether in the data or anecdotally, that the on-site model is moving away from variety. Beer consumers, especially if they go to their local bottle shop and can't get the variety that they have come to expect in the previous decades, they're going to want to go and get something a little bit outlandish and a little bit kind of off the wall, or even less so, just some styles that might not sell as well in a convenience store. They want to be able to get those somewhere. And so going on site to breweries is kind of where that is available to them at this point.
Scott, that sounds like you and I.
It is. It
like
absolutely is. And one of the things we've discovered too, in talking to breweries and regional breweries and national breweries, is a lot of them have pulled back their distribution. To your point, and kind of keep it local or keep it in state or keep it in the tap room. Bigger breweries that Steve and I have talked about, we don't get them here anymore, and it's because they kind of pulled back that distribution, which sucks, but it helps them certainly.
Sure, it helps maintain the velocity off the shelves and out of the taps at like local bars and restaurants and things like that. Beer is a perishable product. You can't just have it on the shelf forever. And so if you're better able to serve fewer markets and you're the number 5 hazy IPA in your market and the number 15 the state next door, a lot of times it's going to make more business sense to really focus on your home state and devote less resources and time to that state next door.
One of the reasons it prompted us to reach out to you guys was in April, you guys released the Brewers Association reports 2024 U.S. craft brewing industry figures. So basically you listed the top, 50 craft breweries in the country. And Steve and I had a podcast about this, and we started talking about these. And there's some really big breweries on this list.
Yeah.
But there's still craft breweries, right? So what kind of constitutes, and I know it's in here, but what kind of constitutes what a craft brewery is? And I'll give a couple examples. Yuengling and Boston Beer Company are 1 and 2, Sierra Nevada 3, really big breweries. So, but they're still craft breweries. Why are they still craft breweries? What's that definition?
Sure. So the definition of craft that we have at the Brewers Association, we had to kind of set the line in the sand somewhere. And so it's producing less than 6 million barrels annually. And so all of those that you listed still fit under that threshold. There are breweries that are larger than that, and so that's our line for small. Independent means that the brewery does not have more than 25% ownership by a non-craft brewery. So, there's a lot of examples, especially in the 20s, where there were craft brands that were acquired by some of the largest brewers or the largest brewer in the country and world. And those were no longer considered craft well under the ownership of that parent company. And so that's kind of how we set the definition of small, because we want to really capture the spirit of small and independent.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, like I said, we had a whole episode about it because we got into the weeds on it. So wow, that's cool. And and then seeing some of the names, we didn't know what they were. Like we knew who Boston Beer Company was, but There were some that were like Tilray beer brands. I didn't know who that was as a whole. Then you dive into it, and there are other brands that make that up. So
Right.
it was a really
Exactly.
interesting list. We loved it.
Great. Well, I'm
Yeah,
glad.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
great,
that's the output from that big annual survey that I was talking about that we do in Q1, and as best as I can as a one-man econ and stats team, try to get it out early in Q2 as I can. But yeah, I'm glad you found it interesting, and yeah, it definitely tells this moment in time of what's happening in the top 50 as well as the whole industry.
Well, and you
Because
helped us too, because real quick, and we started diving into this. It gave us more people to kind of reach out to for further episodes too. We're like,
Awesome.
okay, here's the list. All right, let's start reaching out to some of these people. So
Awesome.
anyway, sorry, Steve.
No, you're fine. No, I was going to say, because even the top dogs out there, the top breweries, they're impacted by all of these changes that you're talking about,
Yeah.
whether there's other craft beer options. But you had mentioned a few minutes ago, and again, it's something that we see all the time too. 5 years ago, maybe you didn't see it as much. Now there's a lot more food options at a
Yeah.
lot of breweries too, because that's become a really important thing as part of the brewery experience.
Yeah. So, and it's food is part of it, but I kind of lump this into the innovation bucket of hospitality experience. Certainly food is a big piece of that for a lot of breweries. I was just back in I grew up in Western New York. I was just back visiting my family and went to an amazing brew pub where, as I was just looking around, there were as many people eat just there for the food as for the food and the beer. I was, market research was doing both. But
Love it.
yeah, food, not every brewery is a full kitchen is gonna make sense for every brewery, but we're starting to see more in terms of thinking about, again, ways to draw people into the brewery. A lot of kind of activities that we didn't necessarily see before. For a while, there would be cornhole and, maybe darts or something simple like that. But more and more, know a couple breweries that have put in pickleball courts, full pickleball courts. I know at least one in North Carolina that has sand volleyball courts and a disc golf course. There's one out here right near me in Colorado with a mini golf course. So it's kind of like thinking of other reasons for folks to come visit. And you know what? All those people, after getting off the pickleball and volleyball court, a lot of those folks are sticking around for a beer. And so it's kind of reimagining the way that consumers are interacting with a space. And for a long time, breweries could be successful with just having four walls and a solid tap list. While that's still out there, what I'm seeing in 2025 is that it's the breweries that are kind of reimagining how to connect with target audiences, through activities, through food, through programming. Those are the ones that are finding a way to grow, even in a overall time of decline.
There's a brewery here in Nashville called East Nashville Beer Works.
Yeah.
And they opened up a second location last year. It's actually a little bit away from Nashville. It's in a different county, and they're about to have their 1-year anniversary. We're going to be going there and doing a podcast from their location. They've expanded so much where, as you said, they have some of the activities that you talked about, but they have a dog park there.
Yeah.
So you go upstairs and there's like this big mezzanine where you can look down and you can see dogs running around with the kids and everything else. And they have also gotten it where it's a family friendly place down on the first floor, but on the second floor you have to be accompanied by adult. I think it's like 15 years old and up. So they have really given that a lot of thought of the whole brewery experience and the whole experience in general of bringing people in there.
Yeah. Absolutely. At first, I thought you were saying that the dog has to be 15 years old or more, and I was like, man, this is going to be a small dog park.
That's funny.
Okay,
They don't run around much either.
Yeah,
they just kind of sit still and not a lot of activity.
Makes more sense.
That's
this way.
funny. Yeah, the dog. Yeah, the kids. Yeah,
that's great. You mentioned at the beginning, possibly like globally, you talked about the Brewers Association and globally. Are there chapters around the world? Are other countries doing their own thing? How does that work?
So there are not chapters globally, but we try to, obviously the U.S. based craft beer industry is one of the leaders, if not the leader, in the world in terms of new product innovation, things like that. Definitely not to step on toes for some amazing beer traditions throughout the world, but in terms of kind of what we think of as modern day craft, a lot of that started here. And so many of our events are Craft Brewers Conference that we hold each year. We always have a good number of attendees from all over Europe, South America, Australia. We have folks from all over participate there. And then we also at the BA have our export development program, which is a program where we're helping American brewers who are trying to expand into different new markets overseas. And so the guy with the coolest travel schedule on our staff, he's our export development program manager or director. And yeah, there are events in Korea and Sweden and Argentina, and a lot of these where it's an opportunity for breweries that are looking to expand into those markets to meet with beer buyers face to face, sample the products, engage with consumers in those markets so that they could understand what flavor profiles resonate, etc. So that's a very cool program that kind of helps expand the reach of American craft beer globally.
That's amazing. CBC has been here before in Nashville, twice that I know of.
I have this up. You can't read it; it's too small. But right behind me is my tacker for CBC speaker in 2023, which was in Nashville.
Nashville, nice.
That's why we're shaping the guitar pick here.
That's okay. That makes perfect sense. When are you coming back to Nashville? Because it's a huge event, and it gets bigger every time it comes here. I'm sure that it's that way for every city.
Yeah. So we were just in Indianapolis this year. Next year we're heading off to Philly. It's unfortunately outside my wheelhouse. That's our wonderful events team who does it. But I sincerely hope that the next time we're in Nashville, it's also during an epic Taylor Swift concert, because that's what it was in 2023. And there was like a biblical storm that happened at the same time. And so the whole town was run over by craft brewers and Swifties. And it was fun. It was a party.
Did you go to the game, or did you go to the concert that night that it rained and she kept playing till like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning? Because I know somebody that was at that concert.
Yeah, I didn't go, and so that was supposed to be the timing of our outdoor welcome reception.
Yeah.
So no, it was just a bunch of waterlogged brewers walking around. But yeah, I didn't make it. But yeah, it was either people with beer T-shirts or sequins. That's like the only people I saw out.
Well, can we talk about? Do you remember any of the breweries that you went to here in Nashville? Any ones that stood out that you got to go to?
Oh, I wish I could have that recall off the top of my head, but CBC is kind of an all hands on deck for the BA staff, as you can imagine. It's was unfortunately running around working more than getting out, but yeah, I mean, I do know that whenever I'm in a place like Nashville, whenever I, snuck out to get some hot chicken in between things, I always make sure that I got something local on tap to go along with it.
Nice. The great thing about CBC, not just the events you guys put on and the stuff you're doing, the influx of distribution into the town that you don't normally get has happened a couple of times. Like we get Burial now, but there were lines of distribution that had opened up just because of that event that we weren't getting before. Three Floyds was one of those. Burial was one of those. And it's like, that is so cool. And you go to a brewery and they'll have their stuff and they'll have a bunch of guest taps too at the same time, just because of CBC. So it's a really cool thing when you just go around town randomly and just seeing stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know that the industry loves, it's a very collaborative industry and one where hospitality is kind of at the core. And so when local breweries can showcase their spaces and their products and hold a little side events or after hours events at their place, it's so amazing to see that kind of melding of our craft beer community.
Yeah, people that might never get together just geographically all come together in one place, and it's so cool to see.
Yeah, and if it benefits the local consumers, like Let's have more of that too.
Oh yeah, we went to I remember going to Fela Forest because they had some brand new Burial on tap. Tap takeover Burial because okay, we're going to Fela Forest and drinking their stuff.
Exactly.
And so I reference
Right.
Burial a lot. Sorry, it's my favorite.
Right.
Hey, how do you guys feel about Untapped? Do you guys have any opinion about the Untapped app? I don't know that would apply to you guys in any way, but
Uh,
you guys cross
you know,
paths in any way?
yes, there are, instances where folks talk. I don't talk, directly with the Untapped folks that often. I know that we've partnered with them because they have some data that, is unique, understanding sort of what people are drinking, how they're rating things in a special way. So, it's a data source that doesn't exist elsewhere. So is very cool in that regard. But yeah, I can't speak to too much overlap in kind of the day to day.
Yeah, no worries. I was just I kept thinking about, is there any overlap there or crossover that you guys might have? But it's a subject it comes up a lot on this podcast as beer drink.
It does. But you mentioned like the data of beer. What are you seeing based on your data of what are some of the beer styles that are really becoming more consistently popular either now or maybe again at breweries across the country?
Yeah, so I looked at this most recently a few months ago, and you won't be surprised to know that as a group, IPAs are dominant in sort of craft in craft volume sales. That's not changing, and actually, kind of year over year, IPAs continue to gain share of craft sales, and that's inclusive of your West Coast IPAs, your hazy IPAs, session IPAs, all of that is kind of clumped together. But then one of the other style groupings that is seen some growth is in craft lagers, which you might see more of that, kind of locally as well. Most geographies that I get to and get out to breweries, I'm seeing kind of more and more of the craft lagers out. Certainly, we were speaking earlier, NAs, lots of growth there. But yeah, I don't know, you mentioned like what's new or what's coming back. I was actually just kind of taking a high level view, listening to a story yesterday about how Gen Z is consuming through nostalgia, even for like a time that they necessarily weren't even born yet. But there's kind of like this throwback, and that nostalgia is important in consumer buying patterns right now. And, when I think back to the fact that for a long time, in the early 2000s, amber ales were kind of everywhere. And I'm just waiting to see if that is, is that going to come right back around and be kind of a gateway into craft for a new generation of drinkers. But to this point, any of those kind of retro styles, I'm using air quotes for audio listeners here, amber ale never went away. It's still that in here, but there's nothing to show that there's any one of those that's kind of like skyrocketing or kind of like set to skyrocket at this moment. But
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if we do see some of those more kind of lesser produced styles coming back in future years.
You talked about nostalgia. One of the beers that I think of is PBR. PBR has come back with a lot
Scott's
of young
favorite
people.
beer.
Has it not? It has some nostalgia for me as well. But that seems to be what a lot of young people are drinking is PBR. It's everywhere now. And I actually had some over the weekend.
How did it taste? Just like the old days?
Just like the old days, I guess.
Yeah.
PBR is one of those things where, and I think it's based on what I've had before. If anything, I can drink one and be like, "That's fine. It's all right. It's good." Or drink it the next time and be like, "God, that's the worst beer I've ever had." So it maybe depends on what I've drank before that one.
Maybe a little in moderation.
Yeah. So anyway, you guys publish definitions and guidelines for beer styles. How often do those come out, and what's kind of the criteria for like a new style if there is one?
Yeah, so this is unfortunately a little bit outside of my realm as well.
Okay,
But
no worries.
I will mention, I know that those are updated as necessary. There's not like a specific timeline of saying we're going to update it, the XYZ. But recently there have been, I could think of like the Italian Pilsner style. That's one that has, over just the last couple years, we've put out guidelines for, because it is a style that has has started bubbling up at more and more breweries. So it's kind of as these styles evolve, we're there with our kind of like group of experts to, and I'm not including myself in that group. It's people, again, much smarter than me, but that are setting it. And then a lot of times we'll have different categories at like the Great American Beer Festival competition or the World Beer Cup that will reflect those styles.
So I do have one request in the sour beer category, and it's not your fault, but there are real sours, like sour beers that, you pucker. And then there are the fruited sours that are really good and we love them, but they're not sour in any way. And I know there's a definition on there. Could we put in a request to like get that category adjusted or edited or something? Because they're not the same beer.
The note is being made.
Yeah, please. Yeah,
yeah.
Just a request. A couple of dopey guys in Nashville.
Consider it sent. Yeah, appreciate it.
Well, so when I'm checking it on tap, it says fruited sour. I go, you got the fruited part right. The sour part's not right. It's just
where's the sour at?
It's just a pet peeve.
We're really fascinated by the right now, at least around this area, over the last year and a half or so, the PB&J sours that are out there that have really become like a big deal. I don't know if you've seen that. You said you're in Colorado, or if you're seeing that kind of trend and that kind of beer across the country.
You know what? I haven't specifically come across a PB&J sour here. Not saying that it's not, just saying that I haven't crossed paths with it yet. But I'll keep my eyes out. Is it something worth pursuing? Worth checking out? You guys liking them?
At least on a flight.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have the luxury of having Zool out of Knoxville kind of in the region. So it's kind of caught fire in this area and people flock to Knoxville to get it. And Knoxville, Erlen Zool is taking over Southern Grist in town in Nashville. Yeah. So hopefully you have a big influx of that. But it's really huge in this area. I don't know how far that extends though.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's good stuff.
That's awesome. And you mentioned that they're taking over another brewery locally. Yeah, I guess, not to steer away from the PB&J sour, which I really want to try now. But I do want to point out in terms of trends, kind of what we're seeing in terms of craft on craft collaboration and consolidation is a lot of that has really picked up in the last couple of years. Over the course of this conversation, we've talked about innovation in products, innovation in hospitality. And this is kind of like the third main bucket is that I think of in terms of innovation in the industry right now is innovation in business model, whether that is, a pure partnership where two different breweries realize that they're running at half capacity and could be much more efficient cost-wise if they go 100% capacity at one facility. It can look like an acquisition, or more and more some of these kind of collaboratives or portfolio of brands that are pooling resources, distribution resources, supply purchasing resources, and being able to make their businesses more cost competitive that way. So sorry, just totally derailed, but I thought I wanted to make sure we mentioned it before we got to the end of this.
I could hear you talk for another hour.
No, I can say you're fine because it's actually a very relevant conversation to us because we did a podcast the past week or so about the fact that Southern Grist is being taken over by Zool at the end of the year. And that's a big deal for us. It's a big deal for the brewery community here in Nashville because Southern Grist has been one of the leaders in craft brew here in Nashville for quite some time. So it's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And for some businesses, an acquisition is really one of the only ways to save the brands, right? If unfortunately if the dollars and cents aren't shaking out, those products could disappear. And so as a way to kind of maintain that and be able to hold on to that for the consumers who do care and want it, one of these kind of like consolidation models could be one of the only ways that you can still get that particular product.
Yeah. And we hope the Grist brand doesn't go away. Hopefully it sticks around in some capacity too, because we love them and we love Zool. And the fact that they're coming together is a really cool thing. We just hope that there's still a collaboration in some way there.
Yeah, and there's another one too here in Nashville. Bearded Iris just got purchased by Wiseacre out of Memphis. So, that's also happened. So it's like if you would have said maybe like 5 years ago that was going to be happening, I don't know if we would have believed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The saving grace is both were acquired by other Tennessee companies, not necessarily Nashville, but Tennessee companies. So they're still within state.
Yeah. Yeah. And so hopefully
It's
we'll maintain a lot of the spirit, and one of the nice things is that, at those locations, now you'll have access to probably a wider array of the acquiring brand than you could before. So potentially, again, keeps these products available to consumers. Yeah, even if it's not exactly, how we would have expected it to play out 5 years ago.
right, but the adding of the new stuff in town is exciting. We're really excited about Zool and Wiseacre being here. So just like you
Awesome.
said, some new product stuff we
Yeah.
couldn't normally get here, possibly.
And see, now you're going to come to Nashville to get the PB&J beers,
Yeah,
and we'll
yeah,
join you.
Yeah, sooner than later, that's for sure.
Hey, one thing I wanted to bring up, I know we're running out of time, but there seems to be more of an influx of different size cans in the market, beer cans, as opposed to your 16s and even 12s. 19.2 seem to be taken off. What do they call stovepipes? There seem to be a lot more of those, and I know they're for different reasons. And then the 8.5-ounce cans is another one. It's kind
Totally.
of going the opposite direction. Are you seeing that? And what are some advantages of that to the breweries?
Absolutely. Yeah. It all comes down to occasions at the end of the day. So especially with the smaller format, when you're talking about the 8-ounce, where some consumers are really cognizant of wanting to not be inebriated, stay in control. If it's something that they want to have a beer before they go out to their destination and they know they have to drive, cutting back third of the volume of your beer is a good way to make sure that your blood alcohol stays at a level that folks feel comfortable with. At the same time, on the other side of the spectrum, the 19.2s, this is a lot of times the folks who come in and are like, geez, I just don't want to drop 12 to $15 on a 6-pack of craft beer. I don't know if that that it's not for every craft beer. Some fall outside of that range, but if they say, tonight I want the equivalent of a beer plus, that's a great opportunity for them to take that over to a backyard barbecue and not have to have paid for 4 beers that they weren't going to touch and would just carry home anyways. Different occasions, and if it sticks in the market, that means consumers are demanding it. And so I'm really interested to see how the smaller format plays out, because I think it's pretty unequivocal at this point that 19.2s have a place in the market. I think that the smaller format are yet to be proven, but there's a lot of really smart folks who are putting out beers in that format. I expect the market research has been done.
I think the style of beer might have something to do with it, because we talked to Hop and Frog, and they went from bombers. They used to have bombers, and they've gone to the 8.5-ounce cans because they're 12 or 13 or 14%, and that's a better size for someone, just like you said. I don't have to get inebriated with 16 ounces or 22 ounces of a 14% beer. But 8.5 is great.
Yeah, and it's kind of like what we said, maybe 45 minutes ago in this conversation. It's really rethinking the purpose of everything, what they're doing, and this is a part of it.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I see them and I'm like, okay, I like it. And like the 19.2s, they're like, some depends on the brand. It's like $3.50. It's like, I can drink, it's pretty good for.
It's an approachable price point.
Absolutely. You buy one, you're at Kroger and you get some hamburger buns and you grab your 19.2% or 19.2-ounce beer.
And 19.2% shouldn't be in a 19.2 ounce. I think we have to draw a line somewhere that feels a bit much.
That would be in the 8.5-ounce can, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Matt, I know we're winding down. We got a couple minutes. Steve, you want to end with anything, or Matt, anything you want to kind of summarize here as we wind down?
I don't know if it's a summary, but I do want to express gratitude for what you guys are doing with this podcast and bringing beer stories to your audience and keeping the craft culture alive. Because this is an industry that I talk a lot in dollars and cents, but at the end of the day, it's about people who care about the product, about a great product. And so, appreciate the conversation that we've had today. Yeah, appreciate the work you guys do.
Well, thank you. And ultimately, we are just beer consumers. We love it, and we're passionate about it, and that's what this comes from. And we drink it every day, and we want to talk about it. And we appreciate guys like you coming on and sharing your time with us.
A true pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just end on what you had said earlier. I mean, there's a lot of great folks out there that are doing this. brewing beer, and we've met them. I mean, we've met a lot of them here in Nashville and traveling other parts of the country and having them on the podcast. And there's a lot of great folks out there that are just, they're grinding hard, and we appreciate all of them.
Right.
Yeah, and we
on.
appreciate what the Brewers Association's doing too, because it's lifting
Yep.
everybody up. It's unity and trying to keep everybody going. And you guys have resources. Next time you come back on, we'll talk about your resources and stuff like that. Because you got a lot of programs and things that you do too. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you saying that.
Awesome, guys. Well, we'll have you back soon, Matt, and we appreciate it. Next time another report comes out, we'll have to get you on, and we'll talk more about some of the stats, because we know that you love stats and we love stats too.
yeah, totally.
We'll do it for the stats. I love it. Yeah, thanks so much, guys.
All right. Thanks a lot from the Brewery Underground podcast.
Cheers.
Cheers.